In Laboratory Reddit, today's story is
I stopped nannying because of my illness and my sister-in-law accused me of theft. Now she's crying because she's being investigated for making a false complaint. For 2 years, I, 33F, looked after the children of my sister-in-law Guinevere, 37F. Her little ones, Mia and Noah, were a delight. Although Guinevere was always a bit stuck up, I loved spending time with the children. I have very special memories of when Mia was very small and Noah was just a baby. I would spend hours playing with Mia, helping her with her crafts and reading stories to Noah while his mother was busy with her own things. Despite not having children of my own, I really enjoyed my time with them and developed a very special bond with both of them. Everything changed when I was diagnosed with a chronic illness. The impact was much stronger than I imagined. My life took a complete turn. I used to be a person full of energy, always on the go, running errands and helping the family. But my body could no longer keep up that pace. Fatigue became constant and even the simplest tasks seemed like mountains impossible to climb. My doctor was very clear, I needed to reduce my physical and mental stress. At first I tried to ignore this advice, thinking that I could overcome it with willpower, but it soon became clear that it was not something I could ignore. There were days when getting out of bed left me completely exhausted. With great regret, I had to tell Guinevere that I could no longer look after the children on a regular basis. I calmly explained the whole situation to her, how my health had worsened and why I needed to focus on my recovery. I wasn't looking for pity, I just wanted her to understand. But instead of showing understanding, Guinevere exploded. Her exact words were, "What do you do all day, you old bag?" That's it. I felt like she had slapped me in the face, but I tried to stay calm. It wasn't fair that she treated me like that. I was dealing with constant pain and exhaustion that she couldn't see or understand. It hurt that she made me feel like I was just being lazy. She kept insisting that looking after her children wasn't hard work and that I was being selfish by not helping. I tried to explain again, but it was like talking to a brick wall. No matter what I said, she was convinced I was exaggerating. Seeing that there was no way to reason with her, I decided to stop responding, hoping the issue would cool down. But Guinevere didn't let it go. Every few days she would send me messages asking when I would be back to look after the children, or telling me how much she needed my help. It was clear that she was trying to guilt me into giving in. At first I stood firm in my decision, knowing that my health was the priority and that I needed to listen to my body. However, after a couple of weeks, the guilt started to get to me. I couldn't stop thinking about Mia and Noah, who were so sweet, and I felt like I was abandoning them. I started to question whether I was being selfish or exaggerating my condition. I wondered if maybe I could help even a little, not as much as before. But then I remembered how my body felt when I pushed myself too hard, and that brought me back to reality. It wasn't just about me at that moment, but about my long-term health and well-being. I didn't want to make myself worse just because I felt guilty. Guinevere's reaction was not what I expected. Instead of apologizing or showing some understanding for my situation, she threw a tantrum for weeks. I barely heard from her except for the occasional passive-aggressive comment. It was difficult to handle, but I knew I needed to keep my distance for my own good. A month later, my husband and I were invited to a family dinner at my in-laws' house. I had mixed feelings about going. I hadn't seen Guinevere since our last heated argument, and the idea of another confrontation made my stomach churn. But after all, it was family, and I didn't want to create any more drama, so I decided to go. I was hoping that things would be civilized and that perhaps Guinevere would have reflected on her behavior. Of course, that didn't happen. As soon as we walked in, I could feel the tension in the air. Guinevere wasted no time in putting me in the spotlight in the worst possible way. She greeted us with that smug smile of hers, the one that made me feel like she was up to something. During dinner, everyone was chatting and catching up, and it looked like it would be a normal evening until Guinevere decided to speak. "So, Arya," she said loudly, "are you still too sick to help with my children? Or is it just an excuse because you're too lazy to get off the sofa?" The silence that followed was deathly. I felt my face burning as I tried to remain calm. I'm not one to make a scene, but that comment was like a punch in the stomach, especially since I hadn't told the family about my condition. My heart was racing as I watched everyone shift uncomfortably in their seats. I took a deep breath and replied, trying to keep my voice steady, "I've already explained my condition to you, Guinevere. It's not an excuse. I'm just trying to look after my health." She didn't even flinch. Instead, she smiled smugly and said, "Health, huh? Maybe taking care of the kids would do you good. It would get you out of your self-pitying rut." She laughed as if she had told the best joke in the world, while the rest of the table exchanged uncomfortable looks. Then the other relatives started asking me what had happened, and I had to tell them the whole situation. I was furious, but I didn't want to make a scene, especially in front of my in-laws. I stared at my plate, clenching my fists under the table. I knew I had to keep my composure, even though inside I was seething. There were so many things I wanted to say to him about his lack of empathy and his ignorance about my situation, but I held back. Luckily, my husband wasn't going to allow this to continue, and he came to my defense before I could say anything else. "Guinevere, that's enough," he said in a firm but calm voice. "You can't talk to Arya like that. She's been through a lot and you need to respect her boundaries." But even with his support, the damage was already done. Guinevere was not going to give in easily and continued to make passive-aggressive comments. "I just don't understand," she said, staring at me. "It's not like I'm asking you to do anything difficult. Looking after the kids is just babysitting for a few hours. I don't understand what the big deal is." The others at the table were looking at their food, waiting for the conversation to end, but it didn't. Guinevere kept pushing, "Maybe if you really helped out, you wouldn't be so tired all the time." By then I'd had enough. I was about to explode, but I didn't want to cause a scene, so I took a deep breath, forced a smile and said, "Guinevere, I've already told you that I can't look after the children regularly right now. If you don't understand that, then maybe we just need to leave it at that." She was quiet after that, but she gave me a strange look. I tried not to think about it too much and concentrate on the fact that I had stood up for myself, but it was hard not to feel small in the face of Guinevere's blatant disregard for my feelings. The rest of the evening was as awkward as you would expect. Guinevere kept her distance, but the tension in the air was palpable and I couldn't relax. Guinevere's bitterness didn't end there. It got much worse. A few days after the family dinner, I was at home trying to relax after another exhausting day when there was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I was surprised to see a police officer. My heart sank as I tried to understand what was going on. I stood paralyzed as the officer explained that he was investigating a theft report. Apparently, Guinevere had filed a report accusing me of stealing money from her house. The words barely made sense in my mind. A theft report against me? I couldn't process it. I immediately called Guinevere for answers. My hands trembled as I held the phone, my heart pounding. The phone rang several seconds before she answered. "Guinevere," I said, "what is going on? Why are there police at my door? Why would you accuse me of stealing from you?" She didn't waste time attacking me. "Do you think you can just abandon my children and get away with it?" She spat down the phone. "Maybe this will teach you not to mess with me. I'm not going to let you get away with anything." I was in shock. This woman had really gone this far to make my life miserable. The accusation was absurd and I couldn't believe we were having this conversation. But with her it wasn't about reason or logic. It was pure revenge. She seemed willing to do anything to punish me for setting boundaries and standing up for myself. I tried to stay calm, but I could feel my anger building. "Guinevere," I said through gritted teeth, "I didn't steal anything from you. This is crazy. Why would you make something like this up?" But she just laughed, as if she enjoyed seeing me upset. "I'm not going to talk to you about this anymore," she snapped, and hung up. I stared at the phone, incredulous. How could someone be so mean and malicious? I didn't know how to process what had just happened. The police officer had been there and Guinevere had taken things so far as to accuse me of theft. It was ridiculous, and yet here I was, caught up in this nightmare. Luckily, the police officer could see that something wasn't right. After a brief conversation, he began to notice the holes in her story. I was an easy target for her, I guess. I had no motive, no opportunity, and definitely no history of anything like this. I had been at home all day. The money was supposedly missing and I had a solid alibi. The officer even checked our security camera, which verified where she had been. It wasn't long before everything was cleared up. The officer was kind and professional, apologizing for the inconvenience and assuring me that everything was resolved. But the damage was already done. Guinevere had tried to ruin my reputation and force me to deal with the consequences of her petty behavior. Although I wasn't in trouble, I was still upset by the whole experience. Guinevere's plan failed spectacularly. When Mark found out about the police report and what Guinevere had done, he was furious. I had never seen him so angry. He had always been the calmest and most patient in our relationship, but this was the last straw. From what I knew, he was no longer happy with her recent behavior, but the accusation of theft seemed to be the last straw. It was as if something inside him had broken. He confronted her and demanded an apology from her, but of course, Guinevere refused. She was too proud, too stubborn and, frankly, too ashamed to admit her mistake. I found out about all this when Mark came to my house to apologize on Guinevere's behalf. To be honest, I wasn't happy to be in the middle of their marital problems, but part of me felt vindicated. She had tried to ruin my life with her lies, and now she was facing the consequences. I couldn't help feeling a certain satisfaction at seeing that things were backfiring on her. The worst thing for Guinevere was when news of the police report reached the school where she worked. She had been a teacher for years and I guess she always thought her job was safe. But when the school found out about the false accusation of theft and the involvement of the police, things started to seriously unravel for her. Although no legal charges were brought against her, the simple fact that she had involved the authorities in such a vindictive manner was enough to tarnish her reputation. I couldn't help feeling a little guilty about how much I was enjoying watching her life fall apart. I know it's not right to take pleasure in other people's misfortunes, but after everything she had put me through, it almost felt deserved. It was as if the universe was finally teaching her a lesson. For so long she had acted as if the world revolved around her, and now everything was falling apart. Of course, none of this came without consequences for me. As much as I wanted to leave all this drama behind, I felt that every time I tried to move on, I was dragged back into her problems. I felt bad for the members of our family who were caught in the middle, trying to decide whose side to take. Some relatives felt sorry for her and thought that maybe I had exaggerated or misinterpreted her intentions, but most were on my side. Even so, there were awkward moments at family gatherings where I had to pretend that everything was fine when, in reality, the situation was very tense. Now, Guinevere's life has completely fallen apart. She seems to be trying to blame me for everything. During another of our family arguments, she lost control. She pointed her finger at me and started shouting that I was the cause of all her problems, saying that if I hadn't been so dramatic about childcare, none of this would have happened. It was as if everything bad in her life was suddenly my fault. But I had already learned to stay calm. Instead of joining in her shouting, I calmly replied, "Guinevere, I didn't force you to make fun of me at dinner, I didn't force you to file a false police report. You did this to yourself." It felt liberating to say those words for the first time. I wasn't going to let her change the story or make me feel guilty. I'm not going to lie, part of me felt that justice had been done to see her face the consequences of her actions. After being a victim of her cruelty for so long, seeing someone so toxic get her just desserts felt right, even if I didn't rejoice in her suffering. I had to remind myself that this wasn't some petty victory for me. It was simply the result of her own choices. The truth is, I never wanted to be in the middle of this drama. I just asked for some space to focus on my health and well-being. But Guinevere took that request as a personal attack. Everything that followed, her accusations, her lies, her attempts to ruin my reputation, was her doing. It wasn't me who escalated things, but I wasn't going to back down either. Guinevere no longer speaks to me and, honestly, I'm fine with that. If he can't respect my boundaries, then there's no relationship to save. I've learned that there are people who just shouldn't be in your life, no matter how close they once were. I've gotten over the drama and am finally at peace with it. The only regret, if it can be called that, is how all this has affected her children. Mia and Noah are innocent in all this, and I have always loved them as if they were my own. I hope they grow up to be kinder and more understanding than their mother. I don't want them to inherit her bitterness and toxicity. However, it doesn't end here. Guinevere is now facing serious problems for filing that false police report. Honestly, I didn't think she would be held responsible, but apparently she is being investigated for making a false report, and it looks like she could have to pay a fine or face some kind of sanction. Frankly, it couldn't have happened to someone more deserving. I don't know exactly what the legal consequences will be for her, but it looks like she will have to face them one way or another. And of course, now that the walls are closing in on her, she is still not taking responsibility for her actions. In a move that I can only describe as completely out of touch with reality, Guinevere started calling me. In fact, she is telling me that I should help pay her fine. Yes, you read that right. She wants me to cover the cost of the problems she created. As if I owed her something after everything she put me through. It's ridiculous, and I'm sitting here shaking my head. At first, I didn't even know how to respond. I don't want to get involved in this back and forth with her. Every time we interact, I feel like I'm taking a step back in my recovery process. But this was different. It was her trying to manipulate me once again, and I wasn't going to allow it. I have spent the last few months working on myself and regaining my peace, and this phone call felt like a slap in the face. She has no right to ask anything of me after the way she treated me. But then she involved her children and tried to make me feel guilty, and now I don't know what to do. Do any of you have any suggestions? Update 1. Many of you have asked me about my medical condition. I want to make it clear that I don't feel comfortable sharing too many personal details here. What I can say is that I get physically exhausted very easily. I'm still learning to live with this and to adjust my pace of life, although it's not always easy to explain it to others, especially when they have certain expectations of me. They also asked me how I came to look after Guinevere's children. It all started a few years ago, when I lost my job. It was a very demanding position that left me exhausted most of the time. After losing it, I found myself at a crossroads, not quite knowing what to do. I didn't want to rush into another equally stressful job, so I decided to take some time to think. Luckily, I found a part-time remote job that has been perfect for me. It's flexible, pays well and I can do it from home, which allows me to manage my schedule better. My husband has a good job too, so between the two of us we can live comfortably. It wasn't the career I had planned, but it has worked out well for us. As I was working from home and had free time, I started looking for other activities. That's how I ended up looking after Guinevere's children. Our relationship has always been complicated. She's not the easiest person to get along with, but when I lost my job, I thought I could help out with her children. It all started when she needed to go on a trip with her friends and her regular babysitter canceled at the last minute. She asked me for help and, although I hesitated at first, I accepted. I thought it would be a temporary thing, but it became my second job. She kept asking me to look after the children even when she wasn't traveling. Mia and Noah are adorable and I really enjoyed being with them, but that's when things started to get complicated. What started out as a favor turned into an obligation. Guinevere became more and more dependent on me and, without realizing it, I became their regular babysitter. At first it didn't bother me, but over time I felt I was doing it more for their convenience than out of a real desire to help. I soon found myself juggling my job and caring for their children, which worked when I felt well, but when my condition worsened, I felt overburdened. Looking back, I should have set limits earlier. I wanted to be the helpful family member who could do everything, but that only led to burnout. I have learned that it is okay to say no and put my needs first, even when someone demands my time and energy. Update 2. It's been a while since my last update. First, I want to thank everyone who has supported me during this situation with Guinevere. It's been a roller coaster, but I'm better now. Here's the latest. Guinevere ended up paying a fine for the false police report, which surprised me that it was resolved so quickly. She was warned that if she did something like that again, the consequences would be more serious. I'm glad she had to face the consequences of her actions, although I'm not celebrating. She would prefer to pretend nothing happened, but things don't work that way. The most surprising news is about Guinevere and Mark. They're separated. It was a big shock for the whole family. I never thought they'd get to this point, but things clearly got out of control. Mark was furious when he found out everything Guinevere had done, especially the fake report. That was the last straw, and soon after they started living apart. They are going to therapy and it seems that Mark wants to try and fix things. I don't know what will happen to them in the long term, but maybe they can resolve their problems if they both put in the effort. I've stayed out of all their drama. It's hard to get involved when you've been falsely accused of something you didn't do. Guinevere still blames me for everything and refuses to talk to me, which honestly relieves me. I couldn't handle her toxicity anymore. There's a limit to what a person can put up with before they have to protect their peace of mind, and now I'm focused on my health and well-being. Even though everything became very toxic, I feel sorry for her. I know her behavior comes from her own problems, but that doesn't justify what she did to me. I've learned the hard way that being family doesn't mean they have your best interests in mind. Some people will manipulate you no matter how hard you try to help them, and at some point you have to draw the line. The hardest part has been not being able to see Mia and Noah. I miss them so much. They were an important part of my life and, although things were complicated with Guinevere, I really enjoyed spending time with them. They are intelligent and sweet children. It's strange not to be part of their lives now. I'm sure they miss me too, but I don't know if I'll be able to see them again. Guinevere made it clear that she doesn't want me to come near her and I don't want to cause any more trouble. Update 3. It's been a month since my last update and I have some news to share. It's been an intense period and I want to thank everyone again for their support. Your kind words mean a lot to me. About Guinevere and Mark, surprisingly, they're back together. I was surprised too, considering all the drama, the accusations, and everything else. I thought their relationship was over, but somehow they worked it out. It's bittersweet for me because, although I'm glad they're better, I still can't see Mia and Noah. I miss them so much. I spent so much time with them and they became very important in my life, but with everything that happened, I can't find a way to see them again. Guinevere made it clear that she doesn't want me around, and although I respect that, I can't help feeling like I'm missing out on something important. I think about them constantly and hope they are well. As for my health, my condition worsened in the last few weeks. I don't want to go into too much detail, but I have been struggling more physically than before. I was stable for a while, but then I had some relapses that affected me quite a bit. It's been a difficult few weeks and there were times when I didn't know if I could go on. The exhaustion was so bad that some days I couldn't even get out of bed. I've been visiting my doctor more often and adjusting my treatment. Little by little I'm getting better, but I'm afraid it could get worse at any moment. I'm trying to take it one day at a time and be patient with myself. I am very grateful for my husband's support throughout all of this. He has been my rock and I don't know what I would do without him. That's how things are for now. I appreciate all the support I have received and hope you are well. I will keep you posted if there is any more news, but for now I am just taking it one day at a time. Thank you again for being there for me. It means a lot.